This programme was funded with the support of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland with the television licence fee.
For centuries, the horse and cart was the only form of transport people had, and it served them well. But then came a revolutionary new invention, the motor car.
Now Denny O'Rafferty's motor car is the greatest, I declare. It's made up of bits and pieces that he picked up here and there.
This was a huge advancement in transport, if you could afford to have one.
With a gallon of stout in the petrol tank, it does 90 miles an hour. Oh, what a wonderful motor car is the greatest ever seen. It used to be black as me father, but now it's 40 shades of green.
Not everyone was in favour of the motor car. Some people called it the horseless carriage. It was noisy, it created more dust on the roads, and it travelled much faster than the horse and cart. As a result, pressure began to mount on the police to curtail these speeding horseless carriages, and thus spawned the birth of the Automobile Association, better known to us today as the AA. The Automobile Association was first formed in England in 1905 and then branched to Ireland in 1910, its specific objectives being to take action to improve the dreadful state of the country's roads, to institute a system of warning and directional signs, and to provide a free breakdown service for its members. The free breakdown service was provided by the AA road patrols and radio patrols, whose first priority was to bring roadside help without delay to members in cases of breakdown or accident. When the patrol was on his beat and noticed a car stopped on the roadside, he would approach the driver and in the first instance ask politely if assistance was required, and if the motorist was not an AA member, he or she would be approached to join. All patrols were issued with a patrol book, an AA handbook, some maps, a first aid outfit, a chain and whistle, rain gear, etc. In 1966, the AA patrol service was completely reorganised, including the replacement of all motorcycles with the more efficient minivans. After these motorcycles were decommissioned and sold off, patrolman John Kane, whose beat was from Dundalk to Drogheda, purchased his motorcycle combination from the AA. My name is Irene Kane, and in this programme called The History of the Automobile Association in Ireland, I get the chance to talk to Peter Connolly, a retired AA frontier officer who was stationed on the border at Carricarnan on the old main Dublin to Belfast road. But first I chat to Barry Kane, whose father was a AA patrolman. Barry owns one of the AA Patrol BSA 600 motorcycles and tells me about the contents of the sidecar and about the AA uniform.
Well, my dad was an AA patrol, and that was the title. It was actually Patrol Kane would be it. He worked with a man called Seamus Doherty, and Seamus and my dad covered a beat, as in Dundalk, Drogheda. At the border there was another 3 AA men. They were what was known as frontier officers. You had senior frontier officer, that was John Flanagan, and Peter Connolly, frontier officer, and Dan Phillips, frontier officer, and that's the 5. And you had 5 of these motorcycles in the area.
Your interest in the AA, when did that begin?
I think it's back when I was about 5 or 6. The first time I ever saw an AA motorbike. And I knew it was a motorbike, but I didn't know what this yellow thing on the side of it was, which is the sidecar. And I didn't know at the time that my dad was chatting with this patrol about a vacancy in the AA. So after a while, my dad said I might be getting one of those bikes. And as a child, I was fascinated because it was so unusual, like a yellow motorbike in a sidecar. So he did. He joined the AA. And I just took an interest in the AA and the bikes. And I used to polish the bikes, and I'd everything in the sidecar, and I'd get window lean and do the perspex, which I really shouldn't have done with a window lean because it scratches. And I used to get my mum's mansion floor polished and polish all the fiberglass, the sidecar and the tank and the windscreen leg shields. And then he used to get Silvo, not Brasso, Silvo, and go over the letters on the number plate. And the letters are EZC 729. So that's kind of where it all began, Irene.
Yeah, you have your late father's motorcycle and sidecar here today in an absolute pristine condition.
This is the second bike my dad had. He had another one that he got when he joined the job in the mid-50s. That was LRI 620. But this one, he got it on a Thursday night. And I remember at the time we were living in Newtown Ballyregan, that's on the Blaney Road out of Dundalk. And if anyone remembers, Highway Patrol used to be on TV at 7 o'clock on a Thursday. And I always watched that programme. But that night I didn't. I waited, and I stayed outside the house, and I kept looking over the hill to see this new motorbike coming. And he didn't arrive until 7:20. I missed the Highway Patrol, but it was well worth it. And I sat outside the house on the road on a cow and gate tin. Remember they had red cow and gate tins, and they had a very large one. And I sat on that, and I waited for this motorcycle to come over the hill, and it did. And this is the same bike we have here today, and that was in 1961. My dad's colleague Seamus Doherty had one of these from the year before, and his bike was LZA 622. So he had the new bike, and my dad still had the old one. So finally my dad got the new bike too, which was now newer than Seamus's bike. So I was quite happy with that. The AA were very strong on image. Hence your bike had to be kept spotless. Your sidecar could have nothing in it, only what should be in it. And can I just quote a regulation from the book? Nobody could sit, rest, lean or ride on a road service outfit, as the bikes were called, except a policeman in the execution of his duty. Day and age, many people say, and who sits in there? Well, nobody sits in there, because when you look in here, you got a toolbox, as in rattle the tools. Over here you got a first aid kit, black metal box, petrol can with petrol, of course, brass pump, which had to be brassed out every day, pump, jack, and up here in a little compartment in the top you have relevant AA literature from the 60s, application forms, maps. And at that time, the annual subscription to the AA was 2 guineas per year. So that's what's up in the lid, Irene. And then in here, you've got your peak cap. As in, when you're off the motorcycle, you wore a peak cap. You got a warning flag if a motorist had broken down around a corner. Red flag with a yellow AA on it. And a yellow top for the peak cap for rainy weather. Of course, we got the gloves, I forget what they're called, but the ones with the white cuff that runs up your arm. Gauntlets, I think they're called, actually. And bin and owl, and of course you have to have your raincoat. Raincoat is there. So that's the content of the sidecar, Irene.
Initially, the AA had a discreet method of warning its members of speed traps ahead. They told their members that their patrolmen would warn of speed traps by saluting the cars with an AA badge displayed as they approached the patrol.
In the very early days of the AA, in fact, when it was founded first, it was to warn motorists about police traps, because at the time the speed limit was so low, I think you could walk faster. But you might get a policeman with a handkerchief and another man with a stopwatch, and you get stopped, done for speeding. So the AA started up a system whereby they would, the members had the badge on the car way back like 1910, and the AA man would salute the badge. And if he didn't salute the badge, that was an indication there was something wrong. And the motorists could stop at the time. It was easy because there wasn't much traffic, and ask the patrol, and then he would tell them there was a speed trap up the road.
As years rolled on, this salute was seen more as a courtesy gesture, and as some of our older generation will remember, the tradition continued for many years after. Great care had to be taken of the patrol book, in which particulars were recorded of all accidents, the assistance rendered, all breakdown work, and brief particulars of members' conversations. Accident reports had to be recorded in a separate part of the patrol book.
The patrol always noted he had his own little yellow AA logo notebook, and I got my dad's one here. So let's see, what was he up to? This would be Mr. Walsh, Copeland Grove in Dublin, and the membership number. Then let's see one that's a bit faded over the years. Yeah, J.B. Morrissey, his badge number. Clara Road, Dungannon, Volkswagen, steering loose, advise member to go to garage. G. Snyder, Belfast, Mini 1575 RZ, adjusted carburetor. And there's numerous entries, all very similar, just whatever he would do to the car.
I'm sure your dad told you many's a story about how they had to prepare themselves for the visit of an important an inspector, or your own inspector from Ireland here, or possibly even somebody coming over from England. Have you any fond stories that your dad would have told you about those times?
Yeah, Dad's inspector was a man called Owen O'Grady he lived in Ardee. He was a Kerry man. I remember him as a child. But Owen also had a motorcycle. So the thing was that my dad was up at his phone box up at Darian's pub on the Dublin Road. He'd hear the inspector coming, and that was fine, and everybody would hear the inspector because he was on a motorcycle. But then in 1962 the inspector got a van, and that didn't sit too well with the men because they couldn't hear him coming anymore. He just arrived. And even my dad one time, it was a wet day, and he was standing in the AA phone box, and he should have been outside standing in the rain saluting members passing, but he was so wet he stood in the phone box. And the inspector came along in the van and opened the door and says, "What are you doing in there?" My dad never heard him coming because he wasn't on the motorbike. One thing my dad did was he always gave the AA credit for how they tried to keep a man warm. Put him out on a motorbike in all weathers, but try and keep him warm with the extra clothing they gave him. There was overcoats, oilskins, pull-up oilskins over the trousers, or the breeches and leggings, I should say. Wee story, if I could tell you. My dad made a heater for a bike. He got a tin can, as in, it was a sweet tin at the time. It would be like an extended bean can or pea can now. And he put it around the front of the exhaust pipe. He cut it and clamped it round and took two little tubes out coming up and put them in his gloves. And only my dad could come up with this idea until the superintendent came along. And then he got a letter then a day or two later. Have that contraption removed post-haste.
Do you know the story behind the chauffeur-driven car that broke down whilst going through the Carricarnan customs post?
Yeah, I heard it. Now, bear in mind, I'm not of an age that I was there for all of this, but I heard the story. And as I heard the story, this man from London, he was the top man in the AA, and he was doing an inspection of the AA in the south of Ireland. And he was coming through Killeen and Carricarnan. So again, it was your uncle was at, Seamus Doherty was at Carricarnan. And this man, and it could have been a Humber, but it was an unusual car at the time. And all the customs chaps at the border all knew this boss man was coming. So he came along and he checked the motorcycle and checked Seamus's uniform and the usual things that they do. And then when he went to leave, the car wouldn't start. So the people working at Carricarnan were all out, thought, now, see what happens here. This man's been put in a spot with this unusual car. And Seamus had it running in no time. And everybody at the border was quite impressed that he was able to do this. And I'm sure Seamus was very impressed too, because this was the top man in the AA and he was just after fixing his car.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
What you say?
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back
I spoke to Peter Connolly, who worked as a frontier officer at the AA Carricarnan post on the main Dublin to Belfast road back in the 1960s. Peter, you were based at the frontier post at Carricarnan as a frontier officer. Give us a brief insight into a typical day down at Carricarnan.
Well, there was different typical days. In the winter time, you had to put in a report for the roads. So what you were allowed half an hour in the morning to go earlier to get the road reports. So what you did with that was you went to the border, and the first man you seen coming north, you stopped him and asked him, what do you think of the roads and where was he coming from? And if he was coming from Dublin, so that was all the better for you. You got a better report from him, because he'd say, well, it wasn't so bad until you came to Tulliesca, until Tulliesca was bad. And from that down, it was bad the whole way. So, so you'd have to ring up the office then right away and tell them what the report was. And that's the report they'd put out over the radio themselves.
What was the AA's responsibility back then in those days for the issuing of the triptych?
Well, you had to be a member of the AA to get a triptych. And the membership for the AA was 2 guineas, £2, 2 shillings. And the triptych was 10 shillings and 6 pence, old money. And all the particulars of the car, the man's name and address was on the top of it. Registration number of the car, engine number, chassis number and tyre numbers, because there was duty on tyres coming from the north to the south. We usually checked the triptychs before they went into the customs to make sure everything was right. And if they weren't right, we'd amend them, what they call amend them, to change the engine number or chassis number or whatever it was. There was 5 pages in the triptych, 2 for the south, 2 for the north, and 1 for himself, the fellow that owned the car.
How did the other people that weren't members of the AA, what did they need to cross the border?
A Free State man going north for the first time had to have someone in the north to sign what they call a bond for them. That meant that they had to be met at the customs, at the Northern Customs there. The man that was doing the bond for you had to sign, and he was responsible for your car while it was in the Free State. If anything went wrong with it, or it was seized or anything like that, he'd have to pay the duty on it.
Can you tell us what you boys down at Carricarnan would have done when you got the little tip-off from the guys at Mullins Cross to say that there was a superintendent on its way?
You'd have to get all spruced up. Like, we had the head boy was called O'Donoghue, and he was a real army major. But he'd make you take off your hat. He'd come down and you'd get his book stamp for him, go out and meet him, take the book and get his stamp for there. Yeah, Mr. O'Donoghue, salute. Take off your hat, Connolly, and have a look at your hair. Okay. Or he'd tell you to get it cut or something like that. That's a bloody disgrace. Go and get your hair cut the next time you're in town. Turn around and see your back, and he'd have a look at your uniform, because your uniform had to be pressed. And yeah, well, we hadn't leggings, but we had the slacks. He'd make sure they were creased, and your shoes gleaming. So when any of them was coming about, you had to be in. But we usually get, if he was coming about, the boss himself, Donoghue, it'd be sent from Dublin. You were told from Dublin what time he'd be passing through at. So you had to be ready for him. And the same from the north. If he was coming back from the north, we'd get word from Belfast to tell us that Mr. O'Donoghue would be passing through your hut at 10 o'clock at night. Make sure you're out to see him. Because he could be a smuggler too, so we had to be out to make sure you got the book, took it in, got it stamped, handed it back to him, and told him quiet. Customs never bothered him. He checked the motorcycles. He'd go over and walk around the motorcycle, and if it wasn't gleaming, he'd tell you off. He'd tell you, make sure you don't come down that road again till that bike is gleaming. And then we had inspector, chief inspector, superintendent, and O'Donoghue. That was 4. And when they came about, the inspector came nearly every week, and saying we were issued with a weekly timesheet, and you put your time on when you started in the morning, and then he come down maybe at 12 o'clock, and he'd put his initials on it, okay, so he was here. He could come at any time. Then you had the chief inspector and the superintendent. They could come at any time and check you to see you were there.
The uniform had to be
spotless
every day.
Had to be,
not only when there was somebody important coming.
No. They supplied you with a shirt, a khaki shirt, and you had to wear a black tie with that. They didn't supply the tie, but you used a khaki shirt. That uniform I showed you there, that was issued to everybody. The patrolmen wore, I'd call them +4s. They were short trousers and leggings below that. Well polished, that'd be shining polished leggings. They'd be inspected maybe with a motorbike. And no, they didn't supply shoes, just the shirt, the tunic and the trousers. Mine was a frontier officer on the side, on the arms. The man on the road had just 2 badges, one each side, AA. AA patrolman was wrote on them. And same on the hat. The hat had a badge on it, AA.
Roadside telephone boxes were available for members' use at carefully selected points along main roads, with each member having their own key which fitted all of these boxes. In this area there was an AA telephone box located on the border at Killeen and another at Dorian's pub just south of Kilsarn. As was a sign of the times then, the AA relied on the honesty of the motorist to pay for the phone call by placing the cost of the call into the money box provided. At certain times of the day, the patrols stood by at these telephone boxes, enabling headquarters make contact with them to pass on information regarding breakdowns or any emergency on the road.
We had no office. We had an AA hut, AA telephone box, KS, on the borderline, which did the northern lads and did us. If we wanted to ring Dublin, we'd go to the box and ring Dublin, or the other lads would ring Belfast. But it was right on the borderline.
Cars generally then were much easier fixed than nowadays. You could probably fix most problems.
Yeah, most. Well, there was no ignition timing on them at that time. It was just plugs and pints and a carburettor and distributor and that. So you knew everything about that. Because I served my time on Burn O'Guire's main Ford dealers in Dundalk. And so I knew cars inside out. Everything was... I was glad to get out on a breakdown. Well, there were mostly Fords, Austins, Morris. That was all the cars we had around here at that time. And so once you fixed one, you knew they were almost the same. Set of pints was the biggest problem. Pints and plugs. On a car there was 4 cylinders, as you know, 4 plugs in it. And there was a distributor in it which distributed a spark to each plug as it passed by the connection inside. And the pints usually stuck when there was a spark jumping across there all the time, so they got burnt and stuck. So once you went, that was the first problem. You went to the car, you opened the bonnet, and took the lid of the distributor, and you had the pints away, flick with your thumb, and you tell them to thread, and you'd show you should go like no problem at all. It was just breaking that connection.
I asked Peter, was it forbidden to use the motorcycle for any other purpose than patrol duties?
I had pigs here, and if I wanted a bag of mail from Kelly's over the road here, I used to run over with the motorbike, throw the bag of mail on top of the sidecar and land over here with it. So I had to dust it off before I went back to the border. That is kind of business, but you have to watch out that the inspector was about to see a bag of mail coming flying down the road on a motorbike.
You went to Nottingham to train. Did everybody had to go?
Everybody
I
had
thought
to
that
go
was
there.
only the senior
No.
frontier officers.
No, the patrols had to go there for 2 weeks training in a big castle. It was a castle.
We now have a clip of a letter sent to my late uncle, Seamus Doherty, instructing him to attend the AA training school in Nottingham, England. It is read by Peter Kavanagh of the Fido programme on Dundalk FM.
It comes from Suffolk Street in Dublin from Mr. K.L. Kelly, addressed to a Mr. Seamus Doherty of Feed Mount Pleasant, Dundalk. The date of the letter is the 2nd of September 1954. The letter reads, Dear Sir, as your appointment has now been approved by Head Office, we attach full instructions in respect of your coming attendance at the Patrols Training School, Nottingham. You will be attending course number 63, which assembles on the 6th of September and finishes on the 17th of September. Your return ticket, Dublin-Nottingham, free berth number 47, international driving permit, free licence to drive, and expense sheets are also attached together with a sum of £8, 10 shillings cash in respect of your likely expenses to and from the school. £4 of this is a part wages in advance. You should catch the 10:40 boat from Holyhead. You should remain on the boat and catch the 7:30 train for Nottingham on Monday morning. You should then arrive at the Midland Station, Nottingham, at approximately 2:45 p.m, which will fit in with the chief instructor's arrangements regarding your arrival at the school. If there is anything about which you are not quite sure, please do not hesitate to contact us immediately. Yours faithfully, and it looks like R.O. Donoghue, Area Secretary.
How did Seamus end up? Did he get a job as a patrolman?
No, Seamus, this is the man, Seamus is a cousin of mine. He was at the border and I went to the border with him. Not at the same time, but we were both at the border together. And then a vacancy came up on the road as a patrolman on the road from the border to Drogheda. And Seamus decided he was going to have a go at the patrol. And he was stationed above at Mullins Cross at an AA box that was up there on the side of the road. That was his office every day.
Barry attends a lot of vintage shows with his BSA 600 and tells me about the reaction he gets from people.
Well, I find there's a lot of interest because one thing is its colour, bright yellow. It attracts people to look at it because you can't miss it. And it goes two ways. You'll get younger people looking at it saying, God, that's very nice, really nice. Can I get my picture taken with it? Can I put the little boy beside it? And then they'll say, what is it? That is one. And the other then is somebody my own age or older will come up and say, God, I haven't seen them in years. I remember the AA man, he used to pass our house every day. You could set your watch by him. Or the AA man used to turn at our door or he used to come in for a cup of tea. And that's the type of thing I get from people. But they're generally delighted to see it's memories for the older people. And I like telling the younger people what it is and what it's about. And they enjoy hearing it.
Finally, Peter tells us about how attention to detail was a big part of the job, especially looking after the motorcycles.
You got a day off every few weeks, maybe once a month, to service your motorbike, and the inspector would come to your house and see that you were servicing your motorbike, change the oil, change the plugs, or change a plug, and maybe a filter or something like that, just to keep it, make sure that it was going at all times. And that's how they were 600 PSA.
Through the years from 1910, the AA has evolved into the ultra-modern motoring support organisation it is today, and has been there to consistently champion the cause of the Irish motorist.
With a gallon of stout in the petrol tank, it does 90 miles an hour. Oh, what a wonderful motor car.
I would like to extend my appreciation to Peter Connolly and Barry Kane for their contributions, and Alan Byrne recorded and edited the programme. My name is Irene Kane, and thank you for listening.
Now two of the wheels are triangular and the third one's off a pram. The fourth is the last remaining wheel from off a double and tram. The number plates in Gaelic and the plugs won't even spark. And the chassis came off of a tinker's car that collapsed in Phoenix Park. Now go for a ride in the motor car and you'll end up with the shakes. The road from Cork to Dublin is a vale of pains and aches.
This programme was funded with the support of the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland with the television licence fee.